Is anyone else getting the feeling that 2024's overall game quality is kind of lackluster? It reminds me of 2021 a lot. We haven't really had the delays that 2021 had, but it just seems like there never was a whole lot slated for this year to begin with. We're in September, entering the final quarter of gaming, and when I look back on everything that's transpired so far, most of the notable games that came out have had significant caveats, and I don't see a single juggernaut. When I say juggernaut, I mean something that far and away would deserve Game of the Year in a vacuum, where you wouldn't even have to look at its competition to be like, oh yeah, that's a winner. I don't think 2024 has that, nor does anything currently announced for the rest of the year have that potential. And that's where the 2021 comparisons get drawn. Think of what was nominated for Game of the Year at the Game Awards back then. We had Metroid Dread, Psychonauts 2, Resident Evil Village, Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and the winner, It Takes Two. 4 of these games are platformer coded, with 2 being pure platformers, which is fucking insane, by the way. That shit will never happen again. You'll usually see a platformer in the running, either a Mario-related one or an indie. Last year was Super Mario Wonder. The year before that was Stray, a game that does all your platforming for you, which is kind of funny. 2020 and 19 had no platformers nominated. 2018 had Celeste. 2017 was Super Mario Odyssey. 2016 had Inside, which is more puzzle than platformer, but still. 2015 was Super Mario Maker, and the earliest production, 2014, had no platformer at all. This episode is going to be very autistic, so buckle up. But so even 2 platformers is unheard of, but 2 additional nominees beyond that from 2021 had platforming elements, and part of the reason this was allowed to be is because the competition had light hitters. I would go so far as to say, based on this history, you can judge the overall quality of a year's games by how many platformers are nominated for Game of the Year. There should never be too many. 2020 should have an asterisk because Crash 4 not being nominated is a crime, but 2020 was a great year anyway, so maybe the golden rule should be 0 to 1 platformers are allowed to be nominated for your year to be good. This is a very fledgling thought, so don't put too much stock into it, but further evidence of it is going to be proven later this year when both Astrobot and Animal Well get nominated because everything else was an IGN 7. I make bold predictions. Brothership is also a thing, but I don't think it'll be that good. This is all coming from someone who adores platformers, by the way, but the genre has faded into nichedom over the years, so I think if you have a year where multiple of the best games are platformers, it means other genres with higher ceilings did not deliver. I am on record stating that It Takes Two is the worst game to have ever won Game of the Year, which doesn't mean it's bad, but to me it illustrates a severe lack of competition. Ratchet and Clank and Resident Evil Village were both games that should be top 5 in a vacuum, maybe. Nothing in that lineup was a juggernaut. I think we're going to get a repeat of that situation in 2024. Let's think about 2024's lineup. What gets nominated for Game of the Year? If you pick 6 games, I think it shakes out like this: Black Myth Wukong, Helldivers 2, Astrobot, Animal Well, Tekken 8, and either Final Fantasy VII Rebirth or the new Dragon Age game, if it exceeds expectations. I don't even agree with this, it's just what I think will happen. There's a couple variables too, like whether or not they'll include early access games since they have before, in which case you might see Palworld, and you'll definitely see Hades too. Hell, that shit would probably win. Hades would have won in 2020 if its competition wasn't so stiff. It had to go up against Ghost of Tsushima, the FF7 remake, and The Last of Us 2. Good luck to anybody on that one. And Hades 2 is just Hades, but better, so far at least. I finished everything it had when it first came out. Another variable would be a surprise release of Silksong, and I do think it'll be a surprise release, like within a couple weeks of the announcement, whenever that ends up being. The last type of variable is one that I supremely hope does not come to pass because it will be so fucking lame. But if they nominate the Elden Ring DLC as if it's a game for Game of the Year, the Game Awards has never pulled that particular kind of stunt, but I still remember Game Informer, God rest its soul, putting The Witcher 3 Blood and Wine expansion as its literal Game of the Year for 2016. Things like that make it difficult for me to weep for your passing, to say nothing of some of your horrendous scores. Nominating DLC for Game of the Year is like nominating a titty for Miss America. You need more than that to qualify. But variables aside, if the 2024 Game of the Year list is as I predict, and even if it's not, none of those games are juggernauts. The closest thing to one, besides Hades 2 when they finish it, is Black Myth Wukong, but despite being oft compared to God of War, it plainly does not reach Ragnarok levels of quality. 2022 was a battle of juggernauts. You had Ragnarok and Elden Ring going head-to-head like a kaiju clash, and also Stray was there for comic relief, I guess. But if 2022 was a 1v1 kaiju clash, 20 2023 was an Omega-ass ultimate goddamn monster free-for-all. Alan Wake 2, Tears of the Kingdom, Spider-Man 2, Resident Evil 4, Super Mario Wonder, and the Godzilla of Titans itself, Baldur's Gate 3. Now that is a juggernaut, the juggernaut of juggernauts. But every single one of those games is better than what we have so far this year, depending on your taste. Like, do you hear the profound difference between last year's lineup versus whatever your predictions for this year are? It's astronomical. All the notable games from this year have glaring drawbacks. Dragon's Dogma 2 was broken on PC, and I heard a fair amount of people who initially loved it were less fond of it upon reflection once the honeymoon phase ended, kind of similar to what happened with the Elden Ring DLC. Helldivers 2 started strong, but gradually pissed off droves of their players with endless nerfs to the point where people just started letting robots take over the planets in protest. Personally, I never thought it was great to begin with, coming from one of the few people who actually played the first Helldivers. It just had a real short shelf life of entertainment for me. Princess Peach Showtime turned out to be mediocre, Suicide Squad was obviously a disaster, Skull and Bones and Nightingale were disappointing, half the people who played the FF7 remake didn't even bother buying Rebirth, quality notwithstanding, South Park Snow Day was trash, Stellar Blade was just decent, Animal Well is too niche, same with Angerfoot, Hellblade 2 is a tech demo, Multiversus is an embarrassment, Unicorn Overlord is great, but it might just be too much game, Zenless Zone Zero is just MiHoYo spreading itself too thin on something pointless, Star Wars Outlaws is Ubisoft, and Concord is hilarious. That's a lot of hot takes right in a row, but to really put 2024 into perspective, there is a universe that exists where the upcoming Mario Party Jamboree ends up being my game of the year, and it's not even that unlikely. If you see that shit at number 1 on my video list in December, pray for the industry. Speaking of upcoming games, I might as well give some thoughts on those. I do think Astrobot is going to be good. I've got it pre-ordered. I still maintain that this game needs to use the corpse of Little Big Planet as a launchpad to become the next creation-based multiplayer platformer. Give us the tools to build our own levels and share them. Restart Little Big Planet's life cycle with a comparable PlayStation-exclusive coat of paint, because I guarantee you, if this game is good, it would work. It's got the costumes, it's got the cute mascot, it's got the gorgeous levels, it's got the functional platforming, everything it needs to take the next step and replace Sackboy's dead woolly body. I've only played one Dragon Age game, which was Inquisition, a game I played for 90 plus hours despite never really having much fun, so I must have been super bored back then. Dragon Age the Veilguard just looks like Fortnite to me now with that new coat of paint, and the last established series to update with Fortnite-y graphics was Saints Row, and we all know how that turned out. Assassin's Creed Shadows releases on the Game Awards' usual cutoff date of November 15th, so I don't know if it'll be in the running, but much like the case has been with the last 6 Assassin's Creed games, I have no interest in this one, no matter how gay the protagonists are. Lastly, Indiana Jones releases in December, so it definitely won't be in this year's broadcast, but after watching like 20 minutes of deep dives and gameplay, I just do not see the vision. Uncharted was obviously inspired by Indiana Jones, but now Indiana Jones feels like a way worse version of Uncharted. First-person, weird whip-and gun action, there should be a modern Indiana Jones game, but maybe this is not the best execution. But that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, you can like, share, and subscribe. Watch all my other videos for more highly contentious content, and I'll see you guys next time.